Hello, it's John Liu, Flow Ninja, and today we're back on the next episode of Flow Gem Stack. And if you're not sure what the gem stack is, covered this in detail in episode 0. So today we're gonna have a quick review of what we built and then extend it. From episode 0, we did a bit of a setup. We have a backend data source, and I'm using SharePoint list, but yours could be database or anything. Database, CDS, it could be files, it could be external data source. We have a flow going on. Let's go update public site. Let me open that. So we have a flow going on where every time we update, it's going to take all the JSON, put it into HTML file, and then write it into our blob storage account. The storage account is then mapped to a CDN. In our case, we're using Cloudflare. You can also use Azure CDN as well. And from Cloudflare, last week I put a new subdomain called guestbook at johnny.net. So remember, johnny.net is my main blog website. So I'm adding a subdomain, and then for everything that subdomain, I'm routing it over to my static site or the. Now, today we want to do a few more things. We want to add a little form here so we can send data back into the list. We'll get right into it. So for me, the first thing I want to do is, and remembering that last week I said a lot of these API work involves using many of the premium connectors. So you should go ahead and just purchase premium. So the trigger we're gonna need is called a request trigger. It's when HTTP request is received, we're gonna need one of these. So basically, when someone calls this endpoint, let's show a form post. So this is a form post. Compose. Here we go. And let's just show all the trigger information. Okay, and this is gonna be public site request. Okay, so let's save that. Now, I also want to quickly change this public site. So as you remember last week, we have a public site where we update this page with a HTML table. Now let's do a little bit more here. We're gonna basically say there will be a form, and then the form will have an input type is text. Name is and then we're gonna need another one, type text, and the name of this is message. Okay, and we need a thing here, action, and that's gonna be when we save this flow, it generates a HTML address. So we're gonna actually just copy that, pop over here, put it into the action. Okay, now, and then we need a submit button. So input type submit, and that's just gonna have a submit button. Okay, let's quickly test this. Now I'm not expecting this to work, and I'll explain why, but let's just quickly test it. We could just run the previous one from last time, which writes it to our storage account. Very quick. If I quickly refresh this, you see now I have this little field, and that's for my person. So I will say John, and then I will say hello, and we will open this the browser developer tool, and then hop over to our network tab here. Okay, and then I will hit the submit button, and we want to see what happens. So we're seeing a few things. Firstly, you see we're calling the URL, and it's doing invoke with person is John and message is hello, so that's very good. But there's a few things missing. It's saying, hey, the API version is missing. What's going on? So let me explain this. So let me pull up a notepad. Oh, and also while I'm at it here anyway, let's just show you all requests. The request here is failed. Okay, missing API parameter. Now what that's really saying is, remember that the URL we want flow wants is this. And in here, right after the query string, we need a few things. We need this API version. In fact, let me keep this question mark with it. We need the API version. We need a kind of a, I don't know what SP is, but this percentage 2F is actually just slash. So you can read it like this. Okay, and then there's a few more bits. There is SP1, and then there is a sig. There is a secret hidden secret. Additionally, this is a post request. By default, these are post requests. So if it's not set, it is actually a post. Okay, so we need to fix a few more things. So firstly, let's pop back to our flow. We will say the method is post. Okay, that's the first bit. And secondly, for this, when a browser does a phone post, it strips everything in this part for up until like, so all the query string in here is actually stripped out, and then it's yeah, so all the query strings actually stripped out. So and then in the case of a GET request, the inputs are then appended as query. Now for us then, we want to do a bit more. We want to basically say, okay, so so instead of so for not to strip out our query string, we put these values into hidden input fields, and we need several of them. So we need 4 of them. So let's quickly paste that out. We need the API version 2016. That's a very old API version 01. We need the SP. There's a SV. So I guess the V is for version 1.0. So really, I'm just taking these values and put them into these name value pairs. And then finally, we need a signature. The signature is this crazy encoded code. It's like a secret key. Okay. If I just paste that in here, then I could tidy this bit up. We only need till the invoke. I think this should be working now, but let's do one more piece here. So in our other flow that is being called, we're going to do a trigger response. And we're just gonna say let's give a content type text HTML. What is it gonna say? It's just gonna say thank you. Okay, so that will return that to the browser. And let's have a quick look at this. So if we go here, redeploy this. So every time we run, we regenerate the HTML and write it to the storage account, which is then refreshing the CDN. Oops. So let's refresh that, make sure we got a fresh one. To John and to hello again. And this time, so let's clear out all this. And we're gonna hit submit. And it's still unhappy. Okay, let's have a look. So the phone post now And we do have the API version. So what's going on? Oh, we need this in the query string. Right, so in the post, you see that this submission still has not worked. Um, when if we have a look at the invoke, it's saying, oh, so all the fields are now being encoded in form data because the method is post. But for the flow invocation to run, these four need to be sent in the query string. So these need to be query string and these can be form data. I'm going to quickly show you a quick way and then we'll show you a more complex way later. So the quick way is over here, we can change the query. We say, okay, rather than this requiring to be a post, let's make that a get. Okay. Then over here, when we send the method, this could be a get. Okay. And we need to override that. So let's do that. Let's do that really quick. And then, so that's done. Let's come back here and refresh. Quickly double check that we picked up the latest version. So that's now a get. Very good. And let's pop on the network tab and let's clear that and try it again. We have that. We have that. And in fact, I always like doing this. Okay, so we have this and we have that. And here we're gonna say we're gonna test and we're gonna actually perform and wait. Okay, so what this does is it puts the Flow web page into a waiting mode. It's waiting to see our submission. So when we hit the submit, that's actually gonna trigger the Flow run, and you see the web page updates. Now the Flow runs very quickly, so this is returned very quickly from the website before the website here is updated. And you see our queries have come through. Now I put in a compose to see the triggers. And if we quickly scroll down, you'll see, okay, all the parameters pass through in the trigger, which is the HTML trigger. And then you see this section on queries. See this? It's got a message, queries. Okay, if I go up a little bit, where is this under? This is actually queries under outputs. So outputs, and then there's header first, but queries after header. Okay, so if we go trigger outputs, queries, that will get us the things we want. So let's quickly, so we can park that for a bit. So let's come back to our flow and let's try use the parse JSON. I don't use parse JSON a lot because sometimes I think it's very restrictive. But in this case, we might be able to get away with it. So we're gonna type the expression. It's trigger outputs. Queries. And if you remember from the sample, it's person and then it's message. Okay, so we're gonna do that. Now, do we need to do any more? Let's think. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, and we are actually also updated with SharePoint, which is our backend data source. Create an item guestbook, and that's gonna need a title. The title is actually the name of the person, and then the message is that message that we put back from the web service. If we come here again, go back, and then we're gonna say John and say hello from episode 1 and we hit submit. That's gonna go through our flow. Gonna go through our flow, create the SharePoint item, and then return with a thank you. Okay, now because it's a GET request, when we do a form submit in the browser, by default, it sends you away from the current form into the web service. So it is basically displaying whatever we're sending back here. Let's come back here. In fact, if I just go back, and if I F5 this, you should see it was updated. So remembering that every time the SharePoint list is triggered, we actually regenerate this page and put it back. Okay, now there's a few things we can do. Firstly, we can say in the back here, we could say we can add a redirect link. href, go back, and let's just paste that URL in here. That will work. So something like that will work. We'll show a backlink for our user to go back to. There are actually a few more methods. One of it is we can do HTTP redirect. We can do HTTP redirect, and HTTP redirect looks like this. We send either a 301 or so generally the best one is something like this one, right, where we send the user back to a page. So now technically we're using a get to get around the query string, but what we're doing is, but I want to show you why that there is a problem with this. So let's go with the 303C other in the redirection with a location header. Okay, so what we could do normally is we could do this. We can do 303, then we will have a location header, and that will basically say go here. Okay, that's the nice way to do it, and let's just save that and show you. John was, and you'll say, oh, it errored the flow. It actually says failed. What's happened is that you see this error message. Status code 303 is not supported. Only 2x and 4x codes are allowed. So from flow, and this may be a thing with the Logic Apps engine, we can't return a error code 300 error code. We can only do 200 and 400. So that kind of puts the redirect, which will have worked really well in the browser, but it kind of puts that out of our possibilities. But there are other ways to do HTTP redirect. If you scroll down, what we can do is do a browser redirection. So the browser redirection is we tell the browser to redirect using the method. Okay, this is an extremely advanced hack, but we put that in here. We need this URL, so don't delete that yet. Now, and then we need that to be 200 again. It's going to be content type, text HTML. So let's refresh that again. What are we looking at? We already got redirect 1. Let's do that again. This is hello with redirect, and this is called the HTTP redirect. And to see this effect, I need to bring up the browser. You're gonna send redirect, and you're gonna see it redirect back. Do you see this? Now, the message did not have a HTTP redirect. So let's refresh that, and now we see HTTP redirect. So that is the redirect after post to flow trick using HTTP redirect. Give you a few more ideas of what you can do with this. You can send this to a flow, you can redirect back. Depending on how often your trigger runs, so I did in my demo, I did have a case where I was testing the SharePoint trigger I was sending several messages in short succession. The trigger did not run as quickly as I would like. I would have liked it to run within seconds, but the trigger seemed to have ran and waited a full 2 minutes before it triggered. So keep that in mind. If you have a lot of people posting and this page is refreshing, you may find that the page is not immediately refreshing with the data. That's purely because of how the page runs. We can, of course, make this request. So every time someone sends an update, rather than wait for SharePoint trigger, we can manually trigger the other flow to force an update, and that would definitely work. We could do other things in the future. We could, instead of simply names and strings, we can also do file submission. So you can do a file upload and send that over to Flow as well. So that's something we could look at in the future. I also want to change the query string. So we're currently using a hack to use get. I want to change that to a post. Lots and lots of ideas to where we take this next. But I think it's good to wrap up with this particular episode. We talked a little bit about creating a second flow to receive messages from the web page. We talked about how to encode the query strings. We talked about updating the data source. We talked about how to handle the redirect when you go back. This is a pattern I've used for static web pages, but surprisingly, this actually works really well for things like hosted web pages too. Imagine that this part of the HTML, this little form could be embedded into SharePoint content page web paths. It could be embedded into Power Apps portals. It could be embedded into WordPress, lots of HTML form plugins. So lots of way for you to insert a little bit of web form, a HTML form that could then send messages back to a flow. And then with this particular post method, these are browser posts. There are no JavaScript involved. Then the browser will navigate away to your flow. So make sure your flow knows how to go back somehow. Maybe you pass the redirect URL you want to go back to as a parameter in here. And then your flow should check, oh, if there is a redirect URL, I will use that instead of this hard-coded one. So that may give you a way to kind of control which page you want to return to from, say you're using WordPress. That may give you that ability. So I hope I give you lots of stuff to think about. Leave me comments, leave me notes about what you want to see or whether this is helpful. And I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye.